Hello, and welcome to a brand new series of In Conversation. I'm your host, Charmaine E. We've got the founder of Sustainable Living Lab, Vera, right here, and ESG Practice Lead, GMO LLC, Hadik. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thanks,
I
Mark.
appreciate it. This is sustainable investing, big topic. So we're going to be getting through it today in depth in many, many areas. But do note that, of course, the views that you are hearing today are solely of those of the gentlemen themselves and do not represent the views of Prudential Assurance Company Singapore Private Limited.
So we don't work with investors as much as we work with the companies, and of course, companies themselves also are investing in other things as well. So when we look at sustainable investing, at least for us, is that it's about looking at the long term, looking at the long run. And the thing is that in the long run, you'll have to bring in all the negative externalities into your consideration as well. So things like environment, social governance. So social governance, for example, it means like, are you treating your factory workers well, right? Are you actually making sure that the communities that you're involved in are thriving because you're there? Or are you polluting the environment? And are you adhering to the regulations that are coming up? Or are you staying ahead of them? So that's the way we see it. But also another perspective that we see coming in is about viewing sustainable investment as what is the opportunities out there, right? So instead of trying to avoid harm, right, you try to actively create good. You actively engage in activities that try to mitigate some of the issues that we're currently seeing around climate change, carbon emissions, and so on.
There has been a lot of interest in ESG or sustainable investing, but there's been, say, a little bit of hesitance in putting money on the table. And one of the biggest reasons is this myth that if I'm investing sustainably, then it is at the cost of returns. And this is not necessarily true for all instances. As I was describing in the definition of ESG or sustainable investing, it is very much aligned with your investment objective, right? So you're trying to manage risk. You're trying to create long-term sustainable returns, and this is something which, as an investor, you would want, right? So I think it's quite aligned to it. Again, different approaches would have different kind of end goals, but in general, I would say that that's a myth, and I think people should kind of move on to from, let's say, why sustainable investing to how, the how part of it, actually.
Why people should cover climate change is that because it is here, it's already impacting us. And particularly, we are in Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia is known to be a very vulnerable region. Singapore, for example, has been told many times by many scientists that we are at risk of flooding, right? Sea level rise will impact us.
Yes.
We also depend on food imports from all over our region.
Yes.
And climate risk will also impact the food security that we have in our country. So I think it is not a faraway problem. It is a problem that we are going to be facing. We're already facing it.
Yeah, we're already facing it.
But it's a slow burn problem, right? So it's one of those things. If you're a frog in a boiling water, right, you wouldn't know it until it's too hot. So I think we are in that same position that while the change is already happening, people are not recognizing it yet. But that is changing. I think we're definitely seeing that's changing. But I hope the change comes faster.
So I think, in our view, I think there are a couple of key differences. One being the technologies or clean technologies in general were not as mature or as cost competitive maybe a decade back. So if you think about prices of, let's say, power generation using solar or wind in 2010 versus today, they've significantly reduced. So I think in the range of 60 to 80% in different parts of the world. So not only these technologies are more cost competitive today, but also there has been like an evolution. The sector is much more mature, so it's more likely to succeed than maybe it was 10 years back. So that's one key thing. And another important part is we're talking a lot about electric vehicles nowadays, right? So we're saying switch over to electric vehicles and like dump your diesel cars and so on and so forth. But a key component of the electric vehicle kind of wider adoption of electric vehicles would be the batteries. So the battery costs have been one of the key roadblocks for, let's say, wider adoption, and those have gone down significantly as well. I think in the past decade, about on the tune of 80%, the lithium-ion battery costs have gone down. So this kind of is creating a scenario or an ecosystem where you not only have more mature technologies, but also which are cost competitive, and hence I feel that this is kind of a structural break, as we call it in investment terms, and not something that is just a short-term fad.
So I don't think it's a fad because, like I said, the change I would say is structural in nature. Regulations have changed, and that's usually a good sign, right? If regulations are changing in accordance with trying to integrate carbon tax, and in Singapore we have the extended producer responsibility scheme coming in as well, that basically costs that were externalities have now been brought in. In the past, we used to have companies looking at sustainability coming at it from the marketing team, right? Today, you have them coming from the business development or strategic planning team. I think that itself shows, right, whether it's a fad or not. I think one of the things over here is that I probably want to bring up this term, right, called greenwashing, right? And I think you'll find that with the increasing amount of interest in sustainability, sustainable investment, everybody is getting on the game, and not all players are necessarily authentic about it, right? And I think a simple rule of thumb would be to ask where such efforts are sitting with in a particular company. So let's say you're talking about a company that manufactures shoes, for example, right? And they say, I want to make my shoes out of materials that are sustainable, materials that have been, renewed and so on. But then if you look at some of their work conditions or their factory conditions and the kind of environment, or pollutive environment they're creating, or maybe even, in trying to set up their factory, they ended up forcing sample off their land in order to procure the factory and so on. So this kind of inconsistent behavior, right, is what you would deem as greenwashing, right?
I mean, this is my personal belief, but I think in 5 to 7 years' time, there will be no concept of a separate or a niche sustainable investing. I think it's just the usual way of investing. So, like Veera points out, sustainability should be embedded in the usual way to do business for corporates. Similarly, for us as investors, like your normal way of investing should include sustainability factors. So it's no longer a separate suite of products, or no longer something that you do only in a part of your asset is basically the way you kind of invest. So that is my hope, that in the next 5 to 7 years, that's how maybe traditional investing might disappear and everything is sustainable investing. But that's how I think it may play out.
From the studio, I'm Charmaine Yee, and I hope to chat with you again real soon. And from both of us at the studio, all three of us rather at the studio, from Hardik, Veera, and myself, Charmaine, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you soon. Stay well and stay safe.